Mr Chairman.
The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Chair, I want to respond in a couple of calls to a number of comments to be made this afternoon in this particular sector. First one I'll deal with is the comment from Dr Megan Woods, where she extensively went into the deep concerns of the Labor Party that were apparently tested at the Select Committee and I would say answered at the Select Committee, but still caused her to lose sleep, particularly over the $12 million demonstration farm that the government contributed to in Saudi Arabia. Mr Chairman, it's worth noting that Dr Woods, in saying that the Minister had said it was an arrangement that was entered into to avoid legal action, that it was in fact the actions and decisions of the previous government that was going to precipitate the legal action in question. And the member, Megan Woods, then went on to ask, well, where is the evidence that there was a potential for legal action? The mere fact that the demonstration farm was committed to and there has been no legal action as a result somewhat vindicates the position of the Minister, who was actually covering for a very poor decision made by a Minister in a previous government. The member, of course, won't remember that because she wasn't here and is of a view that all things that happened in the past were so pure that they can't possibly have ever been wrong or bad. Mr Speaker, just reflecting on the contribution by the Green Party spokesman, the government has no intention of changing our nuclear legislation. And at the start of his speech, he made it very clear that there is no need, that successive governments have, over the years, on no less than 47 occasions, been able to accommodate ship visits to this country inside the parameters of that legislation. And there will be no change to that. Some of his comments, though, I think, around nuclear proliferation are slightly troubling. Anybody who watches the goings-on in North Korea would understand that perhaps there does need to be some deterrence when you get complete nut jobs like that threatening the whole of that region with their particularly odd view of how life should be offered to people, and the potential that that rocket program has for destroying a lot of lives, and certainly at the moment is causing a huge degree of fear in millions and millions of people. Mr Speaker, then we come to Ron Mark's contribution, which was typically rambling and all over the show. I'll try and pick up the threads if I can. I would suggest to Mr Mark that some little effort to understand remedial maths, and particularly the way in which numbers are added up inside budget columns or sideways columns, might be useful. But I want to concede to him immediately that this is a problem that all of us have. It's not unique to him. Mr Speaker, the concentration there on the salary issue, what Mr Mark would say is a disparity between a recruit who's coming in to the armed services around about $43,000 and the Chief of Defence at a much higher salary. That higher salary is set by the Remuneration Authority, and there is one of them. But there are many, many people who choose to serve in the New Zealand military who come in on that base level. What Mr Mark didn't appreciate, I suspect, is that when someone goes into a theatre of operation, there's a military factor applied to the salary, which makes their salary a significantly higher salary than the $43,000 that he was talking of earlier. The other point I'd make is that most of those soldiers who are currently serving in those missions have got more than straight out of Wairuru experience, Wairuru Burnham. They are in fact soldiers who've been around for a time and who therefore will have progressed further up that pay scale. I want to say that it is something that we constantly look at, and Mr Mark will be pleased to know that there is likely to be modest pay increases once again this year for those lower ranks. Mr Speaker, one of the things that the government has recently done is introduce to the Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, sorry,
Jerry Browner,
is published the Defence White Paper 2016, and Mr. Mark is right to say that while it talks about a $20 billion capital spend over the next 12 or so years, there are not specifics in there about what we will spend on any particular piece of military kit. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is if you go back to 2003, the government of the day thought a good idea would be to invest in inshore patrol vessels and offshore patrol vessels. There's nothing wrong with that decision. It was probably, given everything that they knew at the time, the right thing to do. What has, though, it often happens, it's like farmers who buy a bit of kit to work on the farm and find out that it's too light or it's too heavy or it can't manage the particular job it's required to do. The OPVs have proved to be less than optimal for the work that we would require. So what we're trying to do now is say, what is the mix that you might like to have, sir, as a capability, and then consider what would be the best equipment to deliver that capability. So the white paper talks about a further offshore patrol vessel. It talks about a tanker, it talks about littoral support, and we're only talking about the Navy here, and it talks about frigates in the long run. But what it also has in it is a midpoint review in 2018 and an expectation that a future government will probably do another white paper around the 2020-2021 mark. So there are step-off points, but there is a clear signal that we are going to continue investing in the capability of the New Zealand military and that we do want them to have the very best of equipment. So we would expect, given our responsibilities in Antarctica, that we will have a ship that can go down there. We don't at the moment. We will have a plane that can fly down there safely and return. We have an aircraft at the moment that are quite compromised in what they're able to do as far as delivery is concerned. And I'll go so far as to say that we are being increasingly challenged in a competitive sense to hold on to the gateway role that New Zealand has and Christchurch City has to the Antarctic. We have near neighbours, Australia, good friends that they are, who have 8 aircraft that have a fly down and fly back capacity without stopping, with huge payload capacity as well. And that has to be attractive to the United States, who are of course wanting to build a new base down there. We need to put ourselves into the mix around that. An advantage we do have is our proximity, a little closer, certainly a lot closer, or several hours closer to continental USA than Australia. But it means that we should have passenger capacity to the ice and back, because it's a long history that we've had, and we have the very big Ross dependency down there. The other end of the country, there is the Kermadex. And I know Mr. Mark was saying that, well, if we turn it into reserve, how are we going to patrol it? Well, here's a question. It's our territory at the moment. How do we patrol it? Nothing changes effectively, but over time, we do need to have naval capacity that can run missions through that part of the New Zealand Protectorate. And yes, there will be pirating going on there at the moment. That's why we also want to invest heavily in better surveillance aircraft. The Orions are a great aircraft, done marvellous work over a long period of time, and the Air Force have extended that life beyond what might normally be expected. The avionics on them are state-of-the-art, as good as anywhere in the world, but a new aircraft, and we want 4 of them, are what's required, and we'll be acquiring those in the early part of the 2020s. So a combination of things. I simply make the point that in both of these areas, Antarctica, the Kermadex, the Pacific, to add a third one, and then our interrelationship with other countries means that we do have to have a defence force that is capable on a number of levels, and more importantly, can be interoperable on a number of levels. And while we say that we have what the member might have said is low salaries for people coming into the military, as they go through, the opportunities to improve on that are quite considerable.
I call the Honourable Nikki